You're tuned in to Give It a Rest, the podcast, where we're giving tough love truths for the sisterhood. I'm your host, Danielle Byer-Jackson, certified friendship expert and author of the book, Give It a Rest, The Case for Tough Love Friendships. And when it comes to misunderstandings and complications within our female friendships, I am here to help you through it. Today, we are talking about friendship breakups because it's hard out here. And unlike romantic relationships where there are tons of resources to help you through it, there's like nothing for friendship breakups. What are the guidelines? What are the steps? How do you navigate conflict? So today I have three of my friends here to walk us through some of their personal experiences to hopefully show you some examples of how to get through it yourself, how to cope, and how to emerge healthy and whole on the other side. So I have Dejanay, Brianne, and Bria, and they're all bold and courageous enough to tell us a little bit about things that they have been through. So Dejanay, tell us a little bit about your first or most prominent friendship breakup and how you came out on the other side.
Okay. So my very first experience kind of with breaking up a friendship would have been in high school, my senior year. And it was all kind of surrounding my friend and I, always passing notes as friends do in high school and just talking about things in general when probably shouldn't have. So now I don't ever write notes, But the situation unfolded where she ended up passing some of these notes along to a guy that I was interested in. And it just kind of all went downhill from there. And my best friend now, who actually lives with me, is the one who actually told me, what was going on. And that's kind of where it all just started to start ending, and the friendship just kind of fizzled out from there. So it wasn't more of a let it fade out type of deal. It was a kind of an abrupt, like, we're just not friends anymore. And that relationship ended, and then the relationship with the guy ended, and it was just like two really good relationships that I thought, had some sort of value to them, but just did not exist anymore. And that was my real first experience with betrayal. Specifically by a girlfriend, and then also, by a guy, and whatever, that happened for, however more years after that. But
I think it's kind of common, right, for like our first betrayal. And I love that you use that word. Betrayal happens like in high school, right? Because we've got the secrets and guys we like, and we trust so hard and so intensely at that age. So I think that's common, is like that first painful friendship split during those years. So you said you guys don't talk now.
Nope, we don't talk now. We follow each other on social media, but it's really just very minimal interaction. And it's no real, there's no animosity about the situation anymore. It's just one of those things when I was done, I was done. And, that happened a few more times with other relationships and other friendships. And it really just came down to they're just not the right person for me to be friends with, and it's nothing against them anymore. I just don't need to have to go back to that, to that person anymore for anything. So
right. And I feel like that's probably like a really mature takeaway. Like, okay, I guess this just is what it is. Mm-hmm. In fact, research actually tells us that you replace half of your friends every 7 years. So I think back to like high school, and we're doing the math, like calculating backwards. It makes sense that, okay, I guess you've got to be one of the 7 just because you ruined it. Exactly. So that makes total sense. Okay, what about you, Brianne? What's your situation?
I had a breakup a while back. We were really good friends. We hung out a lot. It was girls' night out. We did a lot of that stuff. And it came to a point, she was doing some things differently than I would do, and I was discussing it with some other friends. And, it made its way back, and it just kind of blew up. And where a comment was made, and it was taken totally out of context. And then it felt like there was no going back. I was trying to explain. Of course, it was concerning a matter that was very personal to them that didn't come out online. But in life, I found out there was a lot of the backstory. So it was unfortunate that she felt the way that we couldn't get past that because we had been friends for a while. Mm-hmm. And we just kind of parted ways. I said my piece at the end. I tried to leave on a high note, because I really did. I do wish the best. I did care for her. She just wasn't in a place to receive that.
Okay.
And the friendship was kind of separating a little bit just due to some other circumstances.
And I can tell you're being careful about like, so this one person, yeah. And I totally get that. And it's hard sometimes because, especially like you're saying, there was already like this fizzling out.
Yeah.
And then you said something, and whether you said it wrong or she didn't receive it well, I feel like sometimes that's the starting point for like, sometimes it gets out of control from there. Mm-hmm. And it escalates so fast. And you're like, how did we get here from that one thing I said? Right. But I think it's kind of what you said that you went through is maybe the way to take it is to accept, okay, there's clearly not going to be any resolve. I guess this is what it is, but at least let me say my piece. And I think sometimes that's a missing component whenever we have those conflicts is the part where you're like, okay, can we at least talk about it? Mm-hmm. Because sometimes we move on, they move on, and you were moving on with a completely different narrative of what they thought happened and never had, I guess, the courage to have the conversation. Right. But I love that it was so important to you to say like, okay, we are going to talk about this. At least let me have my say before we move on. Right. Love that. So how are you kind of feeling about it now? Is it something you kind of accept, or do you ever kind of like still wonder like what would have happened, or if I said this? Do you ever still wonder? Because I know sometimes that's something that lingers when it's over.
Yeah, no, I still wonder. I mean, if we were to be in a situation together again, I would gladly strike up a conversation and hope that we could just, pick up the friendship where, obviously not where it left off, but where it was before that. Right. And I'm very careful now, because as girls, we get catty. We talk about things. And it's usually out of a place of care because we care for that person. They're doing something that you're like, oh, this, that's going to be damaging later on, or, self-infliction, or you're like a little mother bird. You're trying to care for them. Sure. And so you talk and then it gets around or something and it gets misconstrued. So I really try to be more mindful about my conversations with the ladies that I have now and try never to really say anything to them that I wouldn't say to their face. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's sometimes my girlfriends will catch me up. They're like, I can't believe you just said it. I'm like, I told her this last weekend. Right. Right. So you can still be real. Yes. And still discuss it. So that was one of the things that I kind of took away from that.
That's a good takeaway. I hope you're enjoying this week's episode of the Give It a Rest podcast, and it's only possible because of our sponsor, the Fresh Tax Maven, the only business bestie that you'll need this tax season. To book your appointment, go to thefreshtaxmaven.com. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Okay, what is your experience?
I was ghosted twice by the same person. So mine ended abruptly. And I don't know why. I thought I had been a really good friend. I thought that I had done a lot for my friend. She was my best friend and someone I'd gone through kind of childhood with and college with. And at some point towards the end of my college experience, she just stopped talking to me. And I wasn't sure why. I didn't understand why. We had some mutual friends. And so it was a guy that I tried to find out and I couldn't. And so it really hurt because it felt like it was unresolved. And it took a while. I think a few years after that, I heard from her, I got an apology. She had a lot going on in her life. And I get that, but I just didn't understand why the break. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of picked up where we left off. And I don't think it was even a year later before she did the same thing again. Yeah. So that was really tough because it, like, not knowing what the root cause was, like I heard in your stories, just to kind of have a years-long friendship end was super tough for me. Yeah. God,
that's really hard. And there's a whole podcast we can do on ghosting because I don't understand it. And that is so frustrating. But thank you for sharing that because I try to think from her perspective because I don't know. I've been guilty of it. The whole ghosting thing. Maybe it's just me at the table.
No.
Okay, we've all been there. But it's so interesting to think on the other side. Okay, was it because life just got so hard and you're telling yourself these stories in your mind of maybe I can't maintain this friendship, or she's developed, like we said earlier, an entire narrative, and so she starts to operate without communicating it to you, and it leaves you like, what's going on? Sometimes I wonder if it's a lack of courage or a lack of vulnerability. If we're friends, I should be able to say to you, like, here's why. Sometimes we think for some reason that it's avoiding conflict by not having the conversation, but then the result is exactly what you're talking about, leaving somebody years later wondering, did I say something? Did I do something? And it never gives you a chance to maybe correct if that's what if that's what's necessary, or to maybe address if she has the wrong idea. It never gives you a chance to like address that misconception or whatever. So that's really tough. So, okay, so how do you feel about like it having happened again? Like, what's your thought there? Are you to a place where you kind of accept, okay, she maybe didn't have the emotional maturity to stay in my life? Or
Yeah, I had a couple of thoughts. I think first for me, I resolved to make sure that I was clear in my communication as a friend, you know?
Yeah.
Like if something was bothering me, that I would say it. If I thought maybe I had said something that wasn't okay, that I would speak up. So I think part of me processing started with me. I think the other part of it was just accepting that maybe we were in different phases of life.
Yeah.
Because that was true. And that maybe it wasn't time anymore. Like the season had ended.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how I tried to process it. Today, because this has been years, we follow each other on social media. And that was something that she initiated. And she actually reached out again, not to discuss the friendship, but for something else. And so I just treat her like I would have treated anyone who had reached out to inquire about something. I was gracious, I answered, but I didn't try to rehash it anymore because in my opinion, I just felt like the time has passed, like that chapter is closed and it just probably needs to remain closed.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah. And that's good, I guess, that you're to a place where instead of maybe getting eager or curious about starting it again, just saying like, and I love the word you use, being gracious about it and still being civil and respectable, but knowing, I guess, a boundary that we can't go there again.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
Fool me once, fool me twice.
Shame on me if it happens again.
But we've all been there. We've all been there. Okay. So breaking up with friends is really hard. That's the theme. And there is no step-by-step 3-point guide for how to move on. The only things I can offer as some point of reassurance is that it happens to all of us. It happens in cycles. Sometimes you're guilty. Sometimes you're not. One piece of advice I would also give is, and I love what you said about sometimes not talking bad about the person to other people, even though you're trying to process, maybe finding somebody outside the friendship group if you really have to vent, because that can kind of get weird with mutual friends, and just finding a place where you can say very peacefully, it is what it is. Because I think intellectually, we all know that friendships end, like we know that. But when it actually happens, we just don't know how to deal. So if you're going through it right now, it's totally natural. Work your steps, work your process, and then move on. Because if you don't, just like with romantic relationships, you might carry that into the next friendship, and then they're trying to deal with or battle with other things that you had not yet resolved. So we're all here for you. It creates room for you to make new friends, which is awesome because you need that emotional and social space. But we are rooting for you. That's the theme. You've got a sisterhood that has your back. If you want to share your experience with friendship breakups, whether you were the one who ended it or if you got ghosted, because it happens, then come join us in the Facebook group, the Give It a Rest podcast after party. That's where we're having conversations about the content here in the podcast, posing questions to each other, and even offering suggestions for topics for future episodes. You can also follow along on at Give It a Rest Movement on Instagram, or you can listen to me run my mouth at Girl Give It a Rest on Instagram. But either way, I hope to see you over there. And in the meantime, we're rooting for you. Huh?
Good job.
All right. Thank you guys so much. That was really good. That was really freaking awesome.
Was I too vague? You're like, I was like, wah, wah.
And then sometime on a certain date, she said, no, but it's good because you have to protect.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And we were talking about this. I was saying like sometimes with like the friendship thing, I was saying that, have you noticed that like on social media and stuff? Like you can talk about like a romantic issue. Like if you have an issue with your boyfriend and then you heal it or whatever, you can get on there and be like, oh, relationships are hard, but we're working through it. Or like if something with at work, you can be like, oh, work is just crazy. But like
I challenge you to like go through your social media. People aren't really talking about your female friendships because we think like if she reads this and I'm gonna look, she'll know who I'm talking about, so I'm not gonna say. So like you don't talk about conflict in friendship, even though it's super normal. But I think we have to like normalize that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I think one of the issues is like if we have a misconception that friendship is supposed to be easy, like we're women, we just click, we just vibe. Then when it's hard, it's like I can't wrap my mind around how that failed because it's supposed to be easy. So some of it, I guess, like starts with our misconceptions about friendship in the first place. I don't know.
I think the other thing, and I think you said it in the video that I watched part of it that you posted, is we do what we see is this whole like squad goal pictures. Let's all have the matching swimsuit and like this is my girl. And so I think we judge our own friendships by what we see in social media, just like romantic relationships, just like life. Because you're like, oh, I'm a good friend, but I don't talk to. Like, we don't have matching outfits.
We don't have matching swimsuits.
We didn't go to Louise and do a photo shoot. Like, so do I really have the right friend? You know? So I think sometimes we don't talk about it because we judge ourselves based on what we see, you know?
Yeah.
Just like everything else.
Yeah.
I like what you said about venting, though, in another group. Because I do feel like you do need a place to vent. I mean, whether you have a therapist or not. Somebody you call your therapist. You know. Or journal it, because sometimes you have to get out of your own headspace.
Right. I think journaling is good. I have come to believe that whatever you say can come back. Like, unless
well, you know, I don't write notes anymore, guys. So.
It's just
maybe for you, it's not journaling.
Pen and paper is a no. I don't even own pen and paper anymore, guys.
Like, I am scarred. Oh my gosh. That's hard out here.
Well, I've always learned that just, you know, good relationships don't end. So it just wasn't supposed to be a thing, you know? And you think that it was, no matter how long or how many years it happened. And then if it ended, that...
And they may change and they may evolve. Like it may not be what it once was, but to your point, like if it's a solid
it'll come back if it's supposed to.
At times you can pick up where you where you left off. So I think that's cool.
Gosh, that should have been in the podcast.
Oh, man.
Gosh, we're like, who? Golly. Okay, well, that was really great. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for making time and then sharing personal stories. I really appreciate you. And I think women watching are going to like to see like different women, different backgrounds, different stories. Cool. So you really helped us come together.
Awesome.
I appreciate you.